Hi, my name is Annie Grace, and I have a really cool story to tell you today, and it's a story about a man named Steve Ozanich. When I was about 26 years old, I moved to New York City, and I didn't drink a lot of alcohol at the time, which is probably a funny way to start the story, but one day my boss came up to me and he said, "Hey Annie, why aren't you showing up at happy hour? Like, what's the deal?" I was like, "Oh, I don't really drink." He's like, No, that's not what it's about. Like, happy hour is like the golf course for corporate America. This is where the deals are done. This is where your expertise would be shown to people. This is where you have to show up if you want to advance your career. And so while I wasn't really serious about alcohol, in fact, I didn't really think much about drinking at all, I was really serious about my career in marketing. And I was the youngest vice president in a multinational company. I took everything very seriously, so I said, okay, I'm in, I'll show up. And I even had a method, and it was a glass of wine and then a glass of water and a glass of wine and then a glass of water. And long story short, if you fast forward a decade, all of a sudden, alcohol became the thing that replaced other things that I used to manage, stress or discomfort, whether it was at work or at home. So for instance, if I'd come home from a long day at work and I'd look at my running shoes or I'd look at the bottle of wine, where I would have always chosen the running shoes in the past, over and over and more frequently, I started choosing the wine. And so all of a sudden, it was 10 years later, I had 2 little kids, I was living in London, and I was now, instead of head of marketing for North America, I was global head of marketing. I had 28 countries reporting to me, and I was flying internationally twice a month. And I was pretty much miserable because I was drinking so much more than I ever had intended or I ever wanted to. I remember one time my 4-year-old coming up to me, and I asked him to sit on my lap and give me a kiss, and he said, "No, Mom, I don't want to because your teeth are purple and you smell bad." And it was one of the many moments that led me to think like, oh, I want something different than this. And how this really ties into this amazing human being, Steve Ozanich, is that at the time I was also experiencing debilitating back pain. Horrific. It had been about 3 years, and it was after the birth of my second son, and I tried everything. I did traction, I did acupuncture, I took muscle relaxants, I did everything you can imagine in the book, probably spending tens of thousands of dollars trying to heal my back. And the things would work for a little while. 2 or 3 weeks I'd feel better, and I'd feel like, this is the thing, this is what's gonna push me over the edge, I'm gonna be okay now. And then it would be back, and it would be so intense. And my dad was riding up the lift with someone, and for some reason they just started talking about my back pain. They were big skiers and just talking about how I hadn't been able to ski with my dad for a while, and he was lamenting about it to this stranger on the lift, and the stranger recommended the book Healing Back Pain by Dr. John Sarno. And I picked up that book, and in the beginning of the book it said, look, there's something happening that you don't understand right now. There's something deep in your subconscious that's going on that's causing you pain. And although I can fix that for you, I can heal it, but it's not your conscious mind I need to talk to. I need you to read this 300-page book, and I need to speak to your subconscious mind, your unconscious mind, because that's where the pain is. And the pain is real, but actually it's coming from moments of stress, and it's not actually due to an injury. And I was like, wow, that's incredible. And so I started reading this book, and I actually picked up this book as well, The Great Pain Deception by Steve Ozanich. And these books, by the time I got done reading them, my pain went away. I mean, I went from not being able to pick up my kids to being able to jump with them on the trampoline in a matter of days, literally. And it was at that moment in time where I was like, wow, the power of my mind, there's something happening that I am just in awe of, something so much bigger and greater than myself. And it was all in my head already. I had that power inside of me. And so one day I was coming back from a work trip, and I was really hungover. I had been out late drinking with colleagues all night the night before. I was coming back to my 2 young kids. I was realizing, man, they deserve the best of me, and I'm giving them the absolute worst of me. And it struck me, and it hit me like a ton of bricks. Wow, well, if that could work, that process that Steve Ozanich and Dr. Sarno took me through, if that TMS process could work for something like pain, maybe it could work for something like addiction. And I formed this theory, and I said, what if consciously I want to be drinking less? As much as I was drinking, I had such a high tolerance. I wasn't even feeling any of the positive effects. I was just feeling all the negative effects. I consciously wanted to be drinking less, but what if in that moment my subconscious just hadn't gotten the memo? And what if I could fix that? What if I could unite that? What if I could overcome my subconscious conditioning around alcohol, these beliefs that I had that I held so dear? I believed things like alcohol relaxed me, or I needed it to network, I needed it to have a good time. I believed these things, like literally I believed the sky was blue. And I thought, well, what if I could undo that lifetime of subconscious conditioning and then just really make a conscious, free choice around my drinking? And so I actually tried to reach out to Dr. Sarno and was put in touch with Steve Ozanich. And Steve, one of the most beautiful and incredible moments of my life, he took the time, we got on a 2-hour Skype call, and I said, Steve, would this work for addiction? Is it the same mechanisms going on here? And he said, absolutely, absolutely. Dr. Sarno has always said this would work for addiction. It is the same things that work in the brain. And so, fast forward 5 years now, not only am I completely pain-free thanks to this incredible book and the work of Steve Ozanich, but I've now written 2 books of my own, This Naked Mind and The Alcohol Experiment, which are 100% foundationed on what Steve and Dr. Sarno have taught me. And it's not just me anymore that's been freed from an alcohol addiction through this process and through this method. It's hundreds of thousands of people all around the world. Not a day goes by that I don't get a dozen thank you letters from people just so grateful, not only to me, but to Steve Ozanich and to Dr. Sarno for doing this important work and really uncovering the mind-body connection, not only between pain and what we're dealing with in our lives, but also between any habit or addiction, something that we want to do less of, but we find ourselves doing more of. So a very sincere thank you to Dr. Sarno, and a just even more sincere thank you to Steve Ozanich for taking that time with me when this was just an inkling of an idea, and now it's something that absolutely is world-changing.
There's a secret still between us, another clue, another lead. I